the Parashat Lech Lecha that we just read, Abraham Avinu is in tests. He has 10 tests that Hashem is testing him. Will he do all of these actions and trust in Hashem or not? And of course, Abraham Avinu stood up and he stood in these 10 tests that Hashem gave him. Also here, Hashem is testing Am Yisrael. How will they react when there are some nations in the land of Israel? And over here we start Perek Gimel, which we started the beginning of it, the first really few psukim, the first 6 psukim of the chapter. Put it on the screen so you can see the psukim of which nations were left in the land of Israel. So over here, pasuk Aleph, the first pasuk in the 3rd chapter. Ve'ele hagoyim asher haniach Adonai lenasot bam et Yisrael et kol asher lo yed'u kol milchamot Knan. So here already you see on the one of the words lenasot that Hashem is leaving these nations in order to test Am Yisrael, in order for the next generations to know how to war, how to battle, and how to get rid of the other nations. And who are the nations that are left? In Pasuk 3, Chamesh Filishtim, V'chol HaKna'ani, V'Tzidoni, Achivi, where they were living, which nations they were, where in the land of Israel. And again, Pasuk Daled, they're there to test Am Yisrael, to see if Am Yisrael will continue keeping the mitzvot, keeping the laws of the Torah that they received on Har Sinai by Moshe and their fathers or grandfathers that received it. Because we're talking about here a few generations after Am Yisrael received the Torah. We're not talking about here like us 3,000 years back. We're talking about just maybe a few generations, 2 or 3 generations after Har Sinai. Uvnei Yisrael yashvu bekerev HaKna'ani, HaChiti, ve'Amori. Am Yisrael was sitting inside these nations, and one of the worst things that happened, there was intermarriage. These daughters got married with the boys of the other nations, and their girls got married with the Jewish boys. And over there, we have a whole mixture of intermarriage. And as we know, that is a very, very horrible thing that can happen to the Jewish people, where the Jewish people can just vanish from that situation. And from here, we continue in Pasuk 7, Pasuk Zayin, where Am Yisrael is doing bad in front of Hashem. We learned last week that there were 3 stages that Am Yisrael can do bad. The first stage is to worship Hashem, but also during their believement in Hashem, that He's the creator of the world, they're also starting to believe in an idol. The second level is they believe in Hashem, that He's creating the world, but at the same time, they're worshiping the other idols. And the worst situation that they got to was that they completely left Hashem away, like they threw Him away, and they're all inside worshiping these idols, worshiping these different nations. And we're going to see where sometime they're going to have a wake-up call, either from Hashem or from the judges that will come and rescue them, mamash, rescue them from the situation that they are in. And in Pasuk Zayin, we start, Vayasu bnei Yisrael et hara b'nei Adonai, וישכחו את אדוני אלוהיהם ויעבדו את הבעלים ואת העשירות. Over here they forgot from Hashem completely, and Hashem got annoyed. ויחר אף אדוני בישראל, וימכרם ביד כושן רשעתיים מלך ארם נהריים, ויעבדו בני ישראל את כושן רשעתיים 8 שנים. They were slaves for this Kushan Rishatayim, this person, this nation, for 8 years. And because they were slaves, just like in Egypt, they were slaves. And over there, what were they doing? They were calling up to Hashem. They were calling up. In those days in Egypt, they had Moshe and Aharon, the big leaders of Am Yisrael. But over here, they're with no leader. Yehoshua died. The book of the Judges started where after Yehoshua died, then Am Yisrael trusted in the next sages for a few days. And we explained that it's only for a few days and not even for a few years. Over here, they had no one to call up to except for Hashem. And Hashem got annoyed, as we said, ויזעקו בני ישראל אל השם, ויקם אדוני מושיע לבני ישראל, ויושיעם את עתניאל בן כנז, אחי כלב הקטון ממנו. ותהי עליו רוח אדוני, פסוק 10, וישפוט את ישראל, ויצא למלחמה, ויתן אדוני בידו את כושן רשעתיים מלך ארם, ותעז ידו על כושן רשעתיים, ותשקוט הארץ 40 שנה, וימות עתניאל בן כנז. So Am Yisrael is calling to Hashem. How did they suddenly call to Hashem? Didn't we say just a few minutes ago, or we just read a few minutes ago, they forgot about Hashem. Why suddenly do they call up to Hashem? When you understand a very important lesson here, a Jew's soul is, a Jew's neshama is always connected to Hashem. Try imagining that there's a string, a string that is always connected from the heavens, from Hashem to each and every single Jew. And that string is never, never, never cut off. Doesn't matter what a person does. Right? As we said around Elul and with the shiurim that I gave coming to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we continued in bringing the Talmud that there's a discussion if Am Yisrael sins, are they considered still the sons of Hashem? Or if they sin, they're not considered the sons of Hashem. And we brought down that the halacha is that they are still considered the sons of Hashem. Same idea in this situation. Am Yisrael is doing one of the worst mitzvot, worshiping idols, one of the worst mitzvot that we're supposed to die for it and not do that sin. And this is what they're doing. But still, they remember in back of their minds, there is someone, they do have a father. Hashem, and Hashem brings a Moshiach, someone to save them, the first judge, Otniel ben Kenaz, and he judges them for 40 years. 40 years, and I just want to read one of the explanations. Hashem. Otniel ben Kenaz, this judge, he had Ruach Hashem, the Shekhinah, the holiness of Hashem upon him. And Rashi, one of the explanations on the whole Bible, he brings down here a midrash, and he brings down here, דרש רבי תנחומה, נסתכל במה שאמר הקדוש ברוך הוא למשה במצרים. Let's see what Hashem told to Moshe in Egypt. ראו ראיתי את עוני עמי. Hashem tells to Moshe when Am Yisrael is suffering in Egypt, Hashem tells Moshe, I see how Am Yisrael is suffering. מה הן שתי ראיות אלה? Right? If this midrash, the pasuk brings ראו ראיתי. I saw and I saw, which means two sayings he's bringing here. What are these two things that he's seeing? אמר לו, רואה אני שעתידים לטעות בעגל. I see in the future, Hashem is telling Moshe, in the future, I can see now that Am Yisrael is going to worship the golden calf. As we all know, after Am Yisrael thought that Moshe was coming down from the mountain of Sinai, they started worshiping the golden calf. And even then in Egypt, where I saw that Am Yisrael is going to worship the golden calf, they are still called my nation. So, and the second one that Hashem saw, דרש עתניאל, אמר בן זקים, בן חייבים עליו להושיעם. And the second one is over here at the time of Otniel ben Kenaz, the first judge that is coming in to save Am Yisrael from this very hard situation. That is the two times where Hashem says to Moshe, Ra'o ra'iti. I see twice where Am Yisrael is going to take off and make mistakes and go off the correct path, but I am still going to be there. They're still going to be considered my nation. And here he sends the judge Otniel ben Kenaz, the brother of Kalev ben Yefuneh, which we all know was one of the 12 spies, together with Yoshua bin Nun, which came back with good things about the land of Israel, and he judged Am Yisrael for 40 years. But after that, as the nature brings, he died. Also, Otniel ben Kenaz died. And over here we go back again, it seems just like a circle. פסוק י"ב, פסוק 12, ויוסיפו בני ישראל לעשות הרע בעיני אדוני, ויחזק אדוני את עגלון מלך מואב על ישראל, על כי עשו את הרע בעיני אדוני. Here Am Yisrael lost their judge, which saved them for 40 years. But it seems here that if there's no leader for Am Yisrael, they just scatter around. Just like if you ever saw a person that has a lot of cattle, that has a lot of sheep, if he won't lead them, or if there won't be one sheep, sometimes it's a sheep that's leading the whole gathering, sometimes it's a person, but if there won't be a leadership for that, if there won't be a leader, then all the sheep are just going to scatter around and everybody's going to get lost. And that's exactly what happened here to Am Yisrael. If there's no leader and there's no leadership for Am Yisrael, especially in these times, they're just going to scatter around. And after the judge, Othniel ben Kenaz, died, that's exactly what happened. There's no leadership. And Am Yisrael is going back and doing again bad things in front of Hashem. Hashem gets mad and he gives strength to who? To Melech Moab, the king of the nation of Moab, Eglon. His name is Eglon, and we're going to see here a very interesting story how the next judge is going to win this nation. ויאסוף אליו את בני עמון ועמלק, וילך ויח את ישראל, וירשו את עיר התמרים. This king, they go, they make Am Yisrael suffer, they kill people from Am Yisrael, they go to war until when? Until they take Am Yisrael to slaves, right? A person can have a choice, either he will be killed or he will go to this nation and be a slave. And this is exactly what happened, where this king and this nation of Moab, they went to Am Yisrael until Am Yisrael picked up their hands and say, we will be slaves for you. ויעבדו בני ישראל את עגלון מלך מואב 18 שנה. For 18 years, Am Yisrael is working for Melech Moab, and of course, not just working physically, but also believing in their idols, worshiping their idols, and as we said, they turned around from Hashem's way. And again, they wake up. ויזעקו בני ישראל, and we see here the psukim are going back and back. One time they go and they turn their backs to Hashem and they worship different idols, and then a few psukim later they call up to Hashem. ויזעקו בני ישראל אל השם, ויקם השם להם מושיע את אהוד בן קרא, בן הימיני, איש איתר יד ימינו, וישלחו בני ישראל בידו מנחה לעגלון מלך מואב. The next judge that we're going to be learning about is Ehud ben Gera. And the words ben Yemini, the explanations say that he's from the tribe of Binyamin, right? If you just take away the hey in the middle, you'll get the word Binyamin. And Ehud ben Gera, he comes from this tribe, and Am Yisrael is sending some kind of a gift with Ehud ben Gera so he can take it to the king of Moab. So we'll see. Maybe he can save us from this horror that Am Yisrael is going through. Vayas lo Ehud, and Ehud makes a plan. He's not just going to go and give them a gift. Oh, nice to meet you. Here you go. And then what? Ehud makes a plan. He needs to conquer the other nation. And in order to conquer the other nations, then you need to get to the highest person in the army. Okay, it's just like a regular army. There's a very big difference between the IDF, the army in Israel, and the enemy army, if it's the Hamas, if it's the Jihad Islami, if it's in Lebanon. The difference is that if Chas v'Chalila, one of the high commanders of the IDF will die or get off the field in the battle, the next one under him right away will take the commandment and will take the order, and he will go and lead the soldiers into the battle. The difference is that in the enemy, if you kill the highest person in their army, most of the chances will be that they won't know what to do. They don't learn, they don't teach themselves what happens if the highest person falls down. And over here, if Ehud ben Gera, this judge, will get to the king of Moab, then he will be able to save Am Yisrael. And this is what he does. Vayas lo Ehud cherev, a sword, v'la shnei piyot, a sword not just with one edge, but two, like a fork. Gomed orka v'yachgor ota mitachat lemadav al yerech yemino. Ehud ben Gera is a lefty. He's not a righty. Just like most of the people in the world, I think, are righties, Ehud ben Gera is a lefty. And if he was a righty, and that's what most of the people were then if someone comes to the king, they check. They check where if you're hiding a weapon, where you're going to hide your weapon on your left leg. If you have a sword, you're going to put it near your left leg in order to pick it up with your right hand from the opposite side and then stab whoever you want to. But over here, Ehud ben Gera was iter yad yamin. He was a lefty. And in that case, he put his sword on the right side of his foot. And that's not where the soldiers or whoever's checking in before they go into the king. ויקרב את המנחה לעגלון, מלך מואב, ועגלון איש בריא מאוד. Ehud ben Gera brings this gift to Eglon, ויהי כאשר קילה להקריב את המנחה, וישלח את העם נושא המנחה. After he brings this gift to the king, Ehud ben Gera sends the rest of Am Yisrael, which brought him to near the king. They send him away. It's okay, I gave it to him, now you can go. והוא שב מן הפסילים אשר את הגלגל, he came from the different idols that they were worshiping. ויאמר, Ehud ben Gera speaks to the king of Moab and he says, I have a secret for you. And what does the king say? The king respects him. Vayomer has. He says, has, silence, all the servants leave the room, and the only people that are left in the room is Ehud ben Gera, the judge that is coming to save Am Yisrael, and the king of Moab. ויצאו מעליו כל העומדים עליו. Everybody walked out. ואהוד בא אליו, והוא יושב בעליית המקרה אשר לא לבדו, ויאמר אהוד, דבר אלוהים לי אליך, ויקום מעל הכיסא. Ehud comes to him in order to act and says, I have a secret from God to you. You need to stand up. וישלח, and the king of the Moab stands up, וישלח Ehud את יד שמאלו. As we said, remember, he's a lefty. ויקח את החרב מעל ירך ימינו, ויתקעיה בבטנו. He takes the sword from his right side with his left hand, and he stabs the king of Moab in his stomach. ויבוא גם הניצב אחר הלהב, ויסגור החלב בעד הלהב, כי לא שלף החרב מבטנו, ויצא הפרשדונה. ויצא אהוד המסדרונה, ויסגור דלתות העלייה בעדו ונעל. What happened? So the king of the Moab was a fat man. He was big and he was fat. And Ehud ben Gera stabbed him with his sword with the two edges with the fork, and he never took the sword out. The sword is inside completely, and the fatness covered the sword, and just the sword was stuck inside. And of course, the king of the Moab died on the spot. And Ehud ben Gera, the judge, remember, nobody else is in the room. Nobody else knows what's happening there. Ehud goes out, closes the door behind him. והוא יצא ועבדיו באו, ויראו והנה דלתות העלייה נעולות. ויאמרו, אך מסיחו את רגליו בחדר המקרה. The servants come, they see Ehud ben Gera leaving the king's room, and they see the doors are closed. And Ehud ben Gera says he's just washing his feet. Some explanations say that he tells them that he went to the restroom for a few minutes. He wants to be alone. Leave him alone for a few minutes. And they wait. They let Ehud ben Gera, the judge, leave. ויחילו עד בוש, והנה איננו פותח דלתות העלייה. They wait and wait and wait, and he's not opening. The king isn't opening the doors. ויקחו את המפתח, ויפתחו, פסוק 25, והנה אדוניהם נופל ארצה מת. They take the key, they open the door, and here they see the king of Moab, their king, on the floor, dead. And Ehud ben Gera, the judge, as he's still there, ואהוד נמלט עד ידמעמיהם, והוא עבר את הפסילים, וימלא את השעירתה. He ran away a long time ago. He wasn't foolish. The second he got out of the room, he gave them the reason that the doors are closed, and he got out of there. ויהי בבואו, he went, he passed the different idols, ויהי בבואו, פסוק 27, ויתקע בשופר, בהר אפרים, וירדו עמו בני ישראל מן ההר, והוא לפניהם. So they go up he runs to the mountain of Ephraim, and he blows the shofar, and Am Yisrael is coming down towards him. ויאמר עליהם, and this judge, they don't know, Am Yisrael doesn't know what happened now until now. But this judge comes to them, and he says, ויאמר עליהם, רדפו אחריי, כי נתן אדוני את אויביכם, את מואב בידכם, וירדו אחריו, וילכדו את מעברות הירדן למואב, ולא נתנו איש לעבור. The judge, Ehud ben Gera, comes to Am Yisrael and says, Hashem is giving this nation in your hands. Now it's time to go to the war. Now it's time to go and battle. And they went, they sealed off at Ma'abarot HaYarden, the valley, the Jordan Valley, in order that the nation of Moab can't run through, can't escape from them. ויקו את מואב בעת ההיא כ10,000 איש, כל שמן וכל איש חיל, ולא נמלט איש. That day, or that time, they went to battle and they killed from the nation of Moab about 10,000 people. ותיכנע מואב ביום ההוא תחת יד ישראל, ותשקוט הארץ 80 שנה. Over here, the ball changed. If beforehand Moab had the ball in their hand and they were in control of Am Yisrael, over here Am Yisrael received the ball with a lot of hard work, and now they are in control of the nation of Moab. ותשקוט הארץ 80 שנה, and how long did this quiet peace last? For 80 years.
80 years.
ואחריו היה שמגר, and then the pasuk, the last pasuk of Perek Gimel, is telling us the next judge after Ehud ben Gera, ואחריו היה שמגר בן ענת, ויחד פלישתים 600 איש במלמד הבקר, ויושע גם הוא את ישראל. Also there, Ehud ben Gera died, and the next judge, Shamgar ben Anat, he came and also saved Am Yisrael in their situation. And the beginning of Perek Daled, again, as you see, the words come back again, ויוסיפו בני ישראל לעשות הרע בני אדוני ואהוד מת. Ehud ben Gera, the judge that saved them from the nation of Moab, he died. And after he dies, there's no leadership. And if there's no leadership, Am Yisrael scatters around. And when Am Yisrael scatters around, then they go and worship and do bad things in front of Hashem. And Hashem sees this, וימכרם Hashem ביד יבין מלך כנען. We go to a different king, Yavin, the king of Canaan, אשר מלך בחצור, ושר צבאו סיסרא, והוא יושב בחרושת הגויים. And he has a general for his army, which is named Sisra. ויצעקו בני ישראל אל אדוני, פסוק 3, קידשה מאות רכב ברזלו, והוא לחץ את בני ישראל בחוזקה 20 שנה. He has a very, very, very big army, a very, very strong army. And Am Yisrael is calling to Hashem, Hashem, now we need help. Hashem, now we need your help again, as we did with the previous king, with the previous times that we did bad in front of you. And how long is their suffering going through? 20 shana, for 20 years. And over here, Hashem brings Am Yisrael 2 judges together. Dvorah, which is something very unique, something very special. A woman, which she was the judge. Okay, that's very unique. And in Perek Hey, when we get next week, when we're going to learn Perek Hey, we're going to see that Dvorah, together with Barak ben Avinoam. Okay, we have Dvorah, Isha Neviah, was also a prophet, but also one of the judges. She was together with Barak ben Avinoam, another judge, and we'll see in the next chapter where she writes a song, a poem about her times of when she was the judge of Am Yisrael. And we're going to learn next week how Dvorah and Barak ben Avinoam, they come and again rescue Am Yisrael from this bad situation that they were in with the king of Canaan, and how they run after them, and how they have the war, how they battle. And then, well, as we saw today, but next week, we're also going to learn about the Shirat Dvorah, which is called Shirat Dvorah, which we read this Haftarah. We read it on the Haftarah of when we read on Parashat Beshalach, when we read Az Yashir, Shirat Hayam, when Am Yisrael crossed the Red Sea, and they sing Az Yashir Moshe Bnei Yisrael, as we say every single day, and we read it on Parashat Beshalach. On that Shabbat, we read Shirat Dvorah. was also a song that Dvorah and Barak ben Avinam sang after or during their time that they were judges for Am Yisrael in their situation. So we see that on this chapter that we learned today, we went through a few more judges and the bad situation that Am Yisrael went through. And the next week, B'ezrat Hashem, we're going to continue with the fourth chapter, Perik Dalid, as we started today with the two judges, Dvorah and Barak ben Avinam, which will come and rescue and save Am Yisrael from their situation. If anybody has any questions, please feel free. If not, have a great week. And